Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in our Hydration with Heart segment, brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut. Today we're featuring Ben Greenfield, a health consultant, speaker, and New York Times bestselling author of a wide variety of books, including Beyond Training, Boundless, Fit Soul, Boundless Cookbook, Endure, Boundless Parenting, and Boundless Kitchen, a frequent contributor to health and wellness publications and websites, and a highly sought after speaker. Ben's understanding of functional exercise, nutrition, and the delicate balance between performance and health has helped thousands of people around the world achieve their goals and improve their quality of life. Today, we're chatting about health hacks that will get you through the holidays enjoyably, the craze behind holiday weight gain, and why statistics show it's more overblown than you think. Now, for decades, the conventional wisdom has been that most people gain about 5 pounds between that first forkful of Thanksgiving stuffing to the greasy egg breakfast on New Year's Day. Well, good news is that the 5 pound pile on is a lot like what you hear about holiday weight gain, overblown. The New England Journal of Medicine published a study of adults showing that the average holiday weight gain was just under a pound, and more than half the people in the study stayed within just over 2 pounds of their weigh ins. Here to chat health hacks and weight gain facts that will take your mind off the pounds and put it on enjoying time with your friends and family is the awesome Ben Greenfield. Welcome to the show, superstar.
What's up, Zen? You got me drooling with that greasy egg comment. Jeez, feel like going out for breakfast now.
Yeah, let's tackle the confusion. I mean, even if even if the scale says you put on 5 pounds, you probably haven't. And now stats, Ben, are showing that a lot of the scale reads of what the scale is reading is more water weight gain than fat gain. And I assume eating more starchy foods, hello, sweets and dinner rolls, and more salt than usual leads to water retention and bloat. And the scale often picks this up immediately. What do you say to this illusion?
Well, yeah, I mean, carbohydrates carry about 4 times their weight in water, which is why a lot of people, if we look at the flip side of this, will get on a low carb diet and lose a bunch of weight. And then when that stalls out, once they've shed a lot of their water weight, they get a little depressed that their diet isn't working anymore. The concept of increasing carb intake from all the sugars and starches and cookies that you mentioned is nearly unavoidable during the holiday season. But you're right. When you get on the scale, a lot of times what you're seeing is an increase in water weight. This is why I also think it's important to not just look at weight myopically. You should look at body fat percentage. There are scales now that will tell you your body fat percentage or the total pounds of body fat that you actually have. And a lot of times, as you've astutely alluded to, a gain in weight can just be sodium related gain or water related gain from carbohydrates, and not necessarily you getting all porky from extra fat.
It's interesting because my hacks, it's always load up on veggies first because it's actually not better for at least me and anyone to show up to a holiday meal super hungry, with your turkey pants on. And when you're starving, we eat quicker and enjoy less food mindfully and overstuff ourselves. So I say eat some veggies as a pre-dinner snack. And of course, eating veggies also first ensures you can enjoy any foods you want, but you're still getting in the nutrients your body needs. But like you're right, you have to start pacing yourself here. So this brings me to my next question. You're highly unlikely to break even by exercising more during the holidays. Now, this type of food exercise math is always faulty. I am 100% pro exercise for its much needed mood boosting benefits. Plus, it can be an escape from a too much family togetherness moment. But it does not cancel out the stuffing and eggnog. Weight loss is around 80% what you put into your body and 20% what you sweat off. There's also the risk that thinking of what you deserve, say another wedge of pecan pie, which is about 500 calories, because you power walked that morning and burnt off about 180 calories in that half hour, is the right way to think about this. I mean, we all know how that story ends. So, what do you recommend?
Yeah, you're right. If you actually pay attention to how many calories you burn in an average hard workout at the gym, you might make a dent in like half or a third of the typical holiday meal. I'm not saying that to depress people, but you're right. Paying attention to the total number of calories that you eat is more important than eating as many as you want than trying to exercise it off. Now, muscle helps you to sock away extra carbohydrates. It helps you to lower your blood glucose, and it can keep your metabolism slightly elevated. So if there's anything to focus on, it would be some type of weight training or resistance training routine, or even if you're traveling, a body weight routine paired with some type of high intensity cardio, because high intensity cardio will keep your metabolism elevated for a few hours afterwards. But it does not burn as many calories as many of us would like to believe. Hence the need to adopt strategies like you just described, Zen. Eating vegetables before the meal. Perfect example to lower the blood sugar and keep you from stuffing your mouth with other calories that might seem a lot more palatable when you're less full from the vegetables. You mentioned hacks, and there are newer things out there that can be excellent for controlling the appetite prior to a holiday meal. Collagen or gelatin or amino acids are very satiating, and these can be found in supplements. There's another brand new kind of like form of appetite satiating liquid called ketones. And you can drink ketones on a very busy day for which you might be exposed to a lot of food, or a day in which you want to keep your appetite satiated. And this is stuff used by like Tour de France cyclists and the military to keep soldiers or cyclists going for long periods of time without food. And it makes you less likely to eat. Eating mindfully and with people, slowing down, chewing each bite 25 to 40 times, talking with people, not being on devices or distracted while you're eating. That's another good strategy. And then, I wear, for example, like a continuous blood glucose monitor on my back of my arm. And so I'm constantly testing what type of foods and eating and lifestyle strategies would lower or raise blood glucose. And it's kind of shocking. The number one thing that keeps blood glucose down after eating a very heavy meal, even though walking helps quite a bit, quick 5 to 10 minute walk before or after the meal, is cold shower, cold soak, cryotherapy, jump in a cold pool or lake or river or ocean. Do something that gets you cold before you go and indulge, and your body actually handles it a lot better. And the upside of that is that you also tend to burn a lot of calories for a long period of time after you've gotten cold.
Love those hacks. That's great. Now, it's even something as simple as trying healthier versions, right, of your favorite holiday foods. Like you don't have to stick to the exact mashed potato recipe you make every year or buy frozen pie crusts instead of doing it yourself, right? When planning holiday meals, I always say opt for homemade over processed foods. And yes, buying from a local bakery or takeout from a healthier restaurant counts for you non-chefs, but also identify where you can add more nutrients into the foods you love, like you just so eloquently put. Now, you're also unlikely to make up for overdoing it quickly, even if you diet in January. So, if you were boozing and sugaring it up, you might not have an easy time going cold turkey. Sweet begets sweet. And once you start mainlining it, you want it, and a salad no longer looks good. What are your hacks around this?
Yeah, it's interesting because what you do the day before and the day after the day of indulgence can make a really good dent in things. So, for example, I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting, meaning I'll occasionally skip a meal or wait until later on in the day to eat. And the day before and the day after, a day like, say, Thanksgiving or Christmas, I'll eat just two meals. I usually skip breakfast or I skip lunch. So that automatically gives me, a certain calorie bank to work with, and I'll also be more physically active on both those days, as well as some type of cold or physical activity on the day that I would be eating a higher number of calories. You mentioned substitutes, and you're right. I mean, simple substitutes, like instead of, I don't know, marshmallows on the sweet potato casserole, you can use a lower calorie coconut whipped cream. Or instead of having, full fat eggnog, you can use like cinnamon and nutmeg and spices and put that into like frothed coconut milk or almond milk. You can even use certain like healthier substitutes, like say cauliflower mash instead of like a white potato mash. So once you start to look around for alternatives, they're out there. It's just a matter of kind of checking out the ingredients and finding some of the healthier options. And there are great websites, that show you healthy substitutes for a lot of different foods.
Yeah, in fact, I like the 1 of 4 rule. Bread, booze, dinner carbs like rice or potatoes, and dessert at any meal. I say you pick just 1 or 2 if you must, but skip the others. And eating a breakfast with filling protein, drinking lots of water, eating veggies and lean proteins, and not showing up to food centric events ready to gnaw your own arm off will also help you avoid those extra holiday pounds.
Yeah, so the idea of food variety is interesting. People have been shown to eat a higher number of calories, and there's a wider variety of food present, such as the stereotypical buffet. So, first of all, loading up your plate with proteins and vegetables first is going to help out a lot with that. Another strategy you mentioned, booze, is interesting because alcohol tends to be burnt preferentially prior to other calories. So, even though some people will say, well, don't drink on an empty stomach, I say, well, if you want some of the socially lubricating, dial spinning effects of alcohol, have your glass of wine before the meal and then switch to sparkling water or like bitters and club soda over ice or something with less alcohol so you have room for the other calories. I'm also a huge fan of the psychological trick of using a small plate. My family makes fun of me sometimes because we'll make these big, glorious family dinners, and I'm the biggest guy in the room, and I got the smallest plate in the room because it's harder to pile a lot of that plate, yet you still get satiated once you've made it through the foods that you've put on the small plate. The same can be said for, small glasses, small mugs, small, wine goblets, etc. And then, as far as the idea that I mentioned earlier, mindful eating, I highly recommend you limit your first portion, eat it as mindfully as possible, and then go back for the one or two items that you might have really liked versus loading up your plate with a ton of food and eating it quickly. Because let's face it, no matter what, even if you're full because it's a holiday meal, you're probably going to be tempted to go back for seconds, even if it's just the fact that you're talking with family members and friends and you want something to do while you're doing it. So you grab more food. So eat slowly, use smaller plates, smaller portions, load up with the fiber and proteins like we talked about. Be careful with the alcohol and find substitutions, and even like have your glass of wine before the meal even begins.
You just condensed your book in like a 5-minute delivery. I love that. Now, you're you're a public figure, and one can argue even you're an expert when it comes to fitness and health, given your career. Now, as a mom, I love coconut water because it's truly proprietary in its health benefits. Potassium, calcium, and magnesium, those are all the important electrolytes, and they play key roles in helping maintain heart health, liver and kidney health, even digestive functions and healthy blood sugar levels. I could go on, muscle and nerve functions, and so much more. But I specifically started drinking coconut water after my radiation while I was battling thyroid disease. And I typically now use it as a cure all for everything, even hangovers. How does proper hydration impact your performance? And can you share any instances where coconut water has made a significant impact on your training or recovery?
Yeah, I think people hear proper hydration and they don't understand that not all water is created equal. There's some really interesting research by a University of Washington professor named Dr. Gerald Pollack that goes into the idea that water that's in what's called a structured form tends to be more satiating and more hydrating. Where do you find that? You typically get it from water filled produce, like, say, cucumbers, pumpkins, melons. I tend to go for more of the plumpy, hydrating vegetables than I do the fruits, just because the fruits you have a little bit more sugar. But that and then adding different mixes of salts and electrolytes to your water can also give it a little bit more of that structured type of feel. Now, coconut water is a perfect example of something that's got a natural amount of structuring in it. It's got a natural, almost like thick gel-like consistency if you notice when you drink it. Now, I used to race Ironman triathlons. I've done 13 Ironman triathlons. I had horrific recovery, and it turned out I needed to get up to 6 grams of sodium per day, balanced with potassium and calcium and magnesium, and also really step up my water intake. And as soon as I did that, I started racing better and I started hydrating better. And it was early on in that journey that I learned that the electrolyte composition of coconut water very closely matches that of human plasma. And so it's almost like the perfect hydrating and electrolyte mix. And people who heard us talking about weight gain in response to sodium intake might raise an eyebrow at this, but the idea is what we're talking about is isolated sodium chloride, like you'd find in table salt. If you get a good mix of hydrating electrolytes, you actually don't see the same issues that you see with high salt intake. And coconut water is a really good example of that.
I love that example. I have to pair you with my good friend Phil's my pharmacist. He trends really well. You guys speak the same scientific language when you answer questions. I love it because now you just gave us not just the personal reason behind why you love it with your recovery story, but you just gave us a very sound, valid, scientific reason that makes total sense. So for the people out there that are weighing the statistics and the research, there you go. Ben Greenfield just pointed you in the right hydration direction. Now, intermittent fasting has landed on the dieting scene as a way to cut calories without cutting your favorite foods, so to speak. And this eating style only limits the hours you're eating rather than what you're eating, allowing you more flexibility in your weight loss plan. So if you tend to backload your calories late in the day, intermittent fasting might be a solid option for you. But then comes the big question, Ben. How do you pick a schedule that's right for you? So you have the 16-8 schedule, the 14-10 schedule, the whole day fasting, the alternate fasting. Just guide me.
Mhm. All those alphabet soup, OMAD, FMD, IFD. So yeah, intermittent fasting, a few quick rules. It turns out that it appears to be better to front load more of your calories early in the day than later in the day. So if you're able to resist having dinner or have dinner at an earlier time, that's better. I realize that can sound societally restrictive. You don't have to do that every day of the week, but doing like a breakfast lunch appears to be better than doing like a lunch dinner. Now, you can eat 3 square meals per day, but the idea with intermittent fasting is you're compressing them all into a feeding window. Typically, it's called like an 8 to 12-hour feeding window. And when you do that, it's just harder to eat as many calories as you would eat if you were eating what's called ad libitum, whatever points you want throughout the day spread out over a longer cycle. And so a big part of the magic of intermittent fasting is that it's just harder to eat a lot of calories in that window that you've limited yourself to. So what's the window? In most men and in postmenopausal women, a 12 to 16 hour period of time each day that you go without eating, and obviously a big part of that could be overnight, is pretty good. In premenopausal women, especially lean, athletic premenopausal women, that appears to cause endocrine and fertility disruption. And a shorter fasting window is appropriate for premenopausal women, like 10 to 12 hours. So I do this almost every day of the year. I'm very competitive with it, meaning like when I finish dinner, I'll literally just like look at my watch, see what time it is. Let's say I finish dinner at 8. Then I know I won't be eating again until at least 8 a.m. And I tend to go more like 14 hours. So I typically finish dinner sometime around 8 p.m. or so, if you count dessert or something I might be having after dinner. And then I won't eat again until about 10 a.m. I'll usually have an exercise session in the morning at some point before I've eaten to mobilize fat stores, sometimes combined with a cold soak or cold therapy, which further mobilizes fat stores. And that's generally a kind of an overview of how the intermittent fasting would work.
Yeah, when we talk about intermittent fasting, it totally makes sense. The idea stems from our hunter gatherer roots. It's thought that our bodies are much more adapted to fasting than we are to our steamed 3 meals a day. And the theory suggests that our ancestors fasted often when food was scarce, causing our cells to learn how to function in a fasted state. And this is according to a 2019 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And thus, intermittent fasting was born. Now, through research, we've seen that because of intermittent fasting, there's improvements in insulin resistance, blood pressure levels, and inflammation. And of course, intermittent fasting is famed for its potential effects on weight loss, which we know now have been proven. It's been seen to help people lose 7 to 11 pounds on average over 10 weeks. And this is according to the Harvard School of Public Health. Now, last question. Why do you think Once Upon a Coconut brand has taken off as quickly and successfully as it has? I mean, coconut water is coconut water, but why are all these VIPs and celebrities like yourself major endorsers?
Because it's good coconut water. What I mean by that, primarily, the appealing part to me is the inner lining of the can. Doesn't have a lot of metals and BPA in it, which is a really common issue in the canned or packaged beverage industry, anyways. They have really good sourcing, and they got flavors like pineapple and the caffeinated one and plain, and then oh my gosh, chocolate.
Chocolate.
That morning smoothie when you break your intermittent fast. Oh my gosh, little chocolate, coconut water, some ice, some protein powder, blend that all up, top it with some bee pollen and cacao nibs. You got yourself like a nice little morning superfood smoothie that tastes like chocolate ice cream for breakfast, guilt free.
Guilt free. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming on. We've gone over the 14 minutes, but of course, we could talk forever because I just love your commentary. I just thank you so much for coming on. It was a great Christmas special.
Thanks, Zen. You're making me hungry.
Know that health is more than diet and exercise. If you're still under the impression that one meal or a few holidays can drastically affect your body long term, you should also know that health is not a two-part formula of diet plus exercise. The podcasts we listen to, the people we spend our time with, the shows we binge on Netflix, the accounts we follow on Instagram, the way we speak to ourselves and others are all things that feed us too. If you're not as focused on the ways you're being fed and nourished besides the food on your plate, or the ways you're burning energy besides exercise, you're missing key pieces of the puzzle. Bottom line, you could eat whatever you wanted and not work out once and still have lots of opportunities to nourish yourself. Focus on how your relationships nourish you, the compassion you're giving yourself, and how you're spending your free time to truly become your healthiest self. That was our Hydration with Heart segment brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut. And that was the amazing Ben Greenfield, a health consultant, speaker, and New York Times best-selling author. You could head directly to his website at bengreenfieldlife.com, or you could check him out on the gram at Ben Greenfield Fitness. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut, 100% pure coconut water. Imagine a drink that's nutrient-rich, powerfully refreshing, naturally sweet with no added sugars, not from concentrate, zero additives, low in calories, absolutely no artificial flavors, and is so tasty that it will become your new favorite beverage. Enter Once Upon a Coconut, the absolute best tasting coconut water you will ever try. Available in 4 refreshing flavors: pure, chocolate, pineapple, and sparkling with energy. Do your taste buds a favor and pick up some today at onceuponacoconut.com.